Hi there, everyone. How are you? I am Dani Henderson, and just bringing up my new beautiful friend, Trevor Grassi, for you, who is going to be host for this beautiful, very first deep dive into archaeological research. Trevor Grassi, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dani. It's very exciting.
It's very exciting. So to those that don't know how I'm going to tell how I met you at the Galactic and Spiritual Informers Connection, our conference that we held this October 2022. And there were it was over 1,000 people there. And we had to have armed guards and security. It was quite dramatic. Lots of people wanted to approach us, the speakers and myself, and they couldn't, unfortunately. You stood out of the crowd. Not only do you look like Indiana Jones, but you called over to me when I was walking by, and it was something about your voice, your resonance, and the way that you touched your heart and you kind of beamed inside, and then you beamed across to me. And I said to the guard, I need to talk to that man. And so then you and I got together. You gave me one of your beautiful tensor rings, which we will get into if there's time today, because guys, there's way too much information that this man holds that he's going to share that we can jam into 1 hour. We will not do it justice. So I got to spend time with you socializing, and you actually protected me, physically protected me from a man, which was incredible. And you're a tall, slender man, but a real man in every way. You know, I am amazed to this moment. Thank you for your protection, sir, your physical protection. I appreciate you.
Very, very weird situation. But yeah, it's actually Laura Eisenhower had said something in one of her talks about how when you're consciously creating or manifesting or asking for a certain experience, you don't really worry about how it comes to you. But part of me would definitely wanted to make connections with you and with all the other speakers there, and ended up happening that way.
Yeah.
But after a whole night of getting to hear your stories about setting this conference up and all the opposition you faced, just
Yeah.
unbelievable experience to get to actually talk to you about how this all happened and came about. And yeah, I would like to spend a whole episode just talking about all the crazy kind of miraculous things that happened just to allow me to get to this event.
I know. Amazing. I mean, you sold land, didn't you, to get there?
Yeah, I was been living off of some money I had from last year basically, and was reaching the end of that. So I was hoping that I would be able to sell this last piece of land that I was hoping to build kind of library on, this whole retreat center where people could come read my books. And I've got a lot, as you can see behind me, but I actually have about 5,000 books total, most of which are in storage still. And I kind of started trying to sell them as a business, but it grew to a very big library, which I want to share with everyone. So that was kind of the idea for this land, but it wasn't quite going to work out. At some point it will, hopefully. But yeah, I ended up selling the land because I basically had to, but my goal was to be able to get that money, or at least know that it was coming, so that I could make it to this conference. And
Yeah.
the last month before it happened, I basically was sure I wasn't going to make it until the last few days. I got enough of a confirmation that I would probably get the money. I still haven't gotten, but hopefully
Well,
I just for it.
again, you know, your story, there's so many people at the conference who had miraculous stories. I'm going to do a round table with some of these people that were attendees next week. But it is the conference that just keeps on giving and giving and giving. There are people that receive spontaneous to them physical healings that they experience. Like one lady had an issue with bleeding and hasn't bled since I mean, just so many stories like that. But my love, what I would like to do now is let people know that you are what we call a research archaeologist. And then I'm just going to hand the floor over to you. And ladies and gentlemen, this particular introduction to Trevor Grassi is called The Opening to the Hall of Records. Trevor Grassi, welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So there were some kind of earlier life incidents that kind of set me up for some of this stuff. For the most part, it starts in the year 2006, and that's where I'm going to start from, because it's when I met John Anthony West, who is the core of a lot of this story. He was at the very heart of all of these other researchers coming forward, and I'd call him the original archetype of the rogue archaeologist or the rogue Egyptologist. And so I had the very fortunate experience to meet him back in 2006 when I was 18 years old and just graduating high school, and discovering him as a independent archaeologist. It was kind of going against the entire story of everything. He gave me a copy of his book, Serpent in the Sky, which was kind of the entrance to all these other enigmas that came out from people like Graham Hancock and Robert Schoch, and a lot of the people that are highly featured in the slideshow I've got to share today, which kind of goes through this whole early first stuff I started researching after I met John. And this was 2006. So I ended up having about over 12 years with John as a friend and mentor and someone I could ask about all this stuff. And he just started giving me all these books, loaning me books, giving me books, and I would just come back with more questions. And for 12 years, basically, I had John West as kind of a consultant as I was researching all this. And I'm going to get into who he is, but for those who already know him, he's basically really changed the whole game here and provided the whole foundation for everything that would come later. Later in my book, I started writing a book as I started putting together all these different pieces of the puzzle and all the things that started coming to me after John's book, just all these other parts of the whole big puzzle that was starting to show itself. So, excuse me, I started writing some notes down to just kind of organize it, and it turned into a book at a certain point, and I've kind of been working on this for the last 15 years. So this is my first time ever bringing any of it forward, my first time giving any interview or video. My book is not published now. It's grown to about 7 volumes, so think Harry Potter sized epic, but nonfiction. Yeah, I'm kind of just going to get into some of the first stuff in the first book today, but I did make this slideshow get pretty long as I kept editing in stuff, as a lot more has been added on about what's going on at Giza today, which is some stuff at the end I really want to get to. So I might kind of race through some of the earlier, but again, if this has to be 2 episodes, no problem. We can just take our time. So I'm going to try and get from this earlier block of stuff, which relates to this current stuff at the end, which is very exciting. And we'll see how we get here. So I'm going to share my screen here. And basically, I have a website where I've put all this information together. And I'm just going to show you this slideshow from this website, basically. So this is opusmagnum.org is my website I've got, and I put this entire thing up. If you just do opusmagnum.org/records, you can find this slideshow I put up. So here we have John West and Dr. Robert Schoch standing in front of the Sphinx. And these two epic men have really brought the Hall of Records forward. A lot of their theories are already known about. Basically, John had found these indications from Schwaller de Lubicz. R.A. Schwaller de Lubicz was this brilliant French mathematician, alchemist, astrologer. And John studied his work a lot, especially the Temple of Man, which is about the Temple of Luxor. And he started seeing that Schwaller was a genius and that he understood the Egyptians on a level that no one else did. So John kind of dug into his books, and he ended up finding a reference to the fact that the Sphinx was clearly weathered by water. And since John didn't really have any credentials or wasn't trained or had any PhD, he ended up finding Robert Schoch as the person who kind of gave it a lot of, he has the credentials, he has the PhDs, he's very highly trained archaeologist and geologist, rather, geophysicist. And so Robert ended up coming with him to analyze all this stuff at the Sphinx. And basically what they found was, this is what wind erosion looks like with sand. It just wears out these horizontal bands of softer layers that get cut out. Whereas rain erosion does these vertical, undulating, rounded, very different kind of weathering, no question, really. And this is what we see at the Sphinx southern wall of the courtyard. where all this rain from the Giza Plateau was just cascading down into this courtyard around the Sphinx, making what is clearly precipitation-based weathering here. So not much of a debate here. I ended up going to Egypt finally with Robert in 2019. Spent 2 weeks with Robert Schoch and Catherine Ulysses, a few other people, his wife, that I'll show a picture of in a second. But here you can see the largest of these cracks, which was filled in with cement to cover over what Robert and John pointed out was here. And this thing goes feet, many feet back deep into this rock. So they covered all this up. And in 2019, I caught this picture of Robert taking more pictures of the Sphinx in front of it. And yeah, I wanted to shout out his tour. Robert's doing another tour next year, and you can go with him May into June. It's going to be doing another 2 weeks, going to all the sites, and definitely want to shout this out quick.
Beautiful.
So here is a pretty good shot of the Sphinx where you're seeing, this is Muhammad Ibrahim, who is brilliant, our official Egyptian guide when we were visiting. So you have to have an official Egyptian guide if you're going to do a tour. Robert chose Muhammad because he's really fantastic. He gives great tours. He's worked with Resonance Academy, Nassim Harriman. He's done tours for Chris Dunn, who wrote the Giza Power Plant book. He's toured. What do you say?
Can I ask you a question?
Of course, yeah.
As we're taking apart some of the mysteries and myths and legends and false lies about the beautiful Sphinx, there's a thinking that this face of the Sphinx used to be a lion, potentially from Lyra, and then the pharaoh who came and built the Great Pyramids of Giza, Ka, put his face there. What say you about that?
I'd say that's a great question. And I'm definitely going to get deep into that a little bit further along in the show. So I'll kind of leave that. But yes, great observation. I do believe the Sphinx was fully a lion at one point, and specifically a lioness, female lion. So, yeah, it's very cool stuff about the identity of the Sphinx that's just coming out. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. But this is another good shot to just show. Eventually, Robert and Dr. Thomas Dobecki and John West did a scan here to try and further analyze the subsurface strata of the rock and how that had been weathered by this water. Turns out they ended up finding a chamber, a rectangular chamber about right here, which you can see is kind of under this wood thing. And you can also see some newer kind of masonry around here, but they found basically a rectangular chamber right under the front of the left paw right here. So this is a great picture. I love this picture of Muhammad. But here's Muhammad also, and Hani Safwa, who is another of our guides. These guys were both wonderful, just really brilliant. And this gives a good idea of the dream stele of Thutmose IV is right here in the front. We get this picture of what looks like a hall of records right underneath the Sphinx. So this is a symbol that's going to come up later, and I just wanted to get that out in our heads. You see the two Sphinxes, which is part of this whole riddle and this whole code, and often been said that one is the terrestrial Sphinx and one the celestial Sphinx, which would be Leo, or something like that. But I get into that a little bit in my book, have some ideas about it.
And just very quickly, people who've not seen this frontal position of the beautiful Sphinx have never seen that giant tablet that sits in front. And it could be similar to the Ten Commandments, for example. You mentioned it belongs to Thutmose.
Thutmose IV, yeah. So that was his dream stele. He put that up. You can see it behind the whole crew here, where I'll just quickly say is Muhammad, Robert, and Katie. Hani is over here. This is Muhammad Zechariah. He was another great awesome guide, and Osama Saeed, who was really great too, helping us set up this tour. He taught me all kinds of cool head wraps like Lawrence of Arabia with the scarves that I could do. So this whole crew was amazing. We got 2 weeks together, and I couldn't have asked for a better team. But yeah, the dream stele, that's Thutmose IV. He put this up and he said, I had this vision, I had this encounter with the Sphinx, and the Sphinx told me if I restored the whole courtyard in the area, clean it out of sand, then I would become pharaoh, and I would get to be king of the land. And basically, you know, that's what it's talking about, is Thutmose's dream of being told he would become pharaoh if he restored the Sphinx. So yeah, it's also got this one part on it where it has part of Khafra's name on it, has the first syllable Kaf written on it before it's kind of broken off. So that's been taken as evidence that Khafra built the Sphinx. That's one of 3 points that's usually used to justify that. This is Robert's great book, which he just revised and expanded and added. Catherine also helped contribute here. So this is his new version of a book about, you know, what caused this catastrophes in the early ages. He's very much associating it with plasma and with the sun and what was going on with the solar activity way back when. This is even the Rongo Rongo script from Easter Island, which he's tying together to some of these proto-hieroglyphic languages, even in Turkey, and really great stuff, but we'll get to there. This is just another entrance of the Sphinx around the back, which everyone gets pictures of because it's the easiest to photograph. And this is Frank Domingo's forensic analysis of the Sphinx's face versus the Khafra statue, which was discovered in the Valley Temple just in front of the Sphinx. So this is one of the other 3 reasons why the Sphinx is attributed to Khafra. But as you can see from this analysis, these faces are nothing alike, especially when you understand how exactly they could replicate the faces of pharaohs, the whole angle of everything.
This is so exciting. Could you tell people who Khafra is and where Khafra's pyramid is positioned, please?
Yes, there's going to be a lot more images that kind of put that in context too, but Khafra who's also called Khephren, was the one who they've attributed the middle pyramid to of the 3 great pyramids, which has a causeway that kind of comes right down to the Sphinx. And so the 3 principal reasons that it's attributed to Khafra is, 1, because they found this statue of him in the Valley Temple, which is just in front of the Sphinx. You have the Sphinx Temple, and right next to it is the Valley Temple. So his statue is found here. It's a beautiful statue. Actually, I have a granite one that I got from Egypt, which shows it's got this Horus on the back of his head. But it's a beautiful statue, but it really does not mean that Khafra built the Sphinx.
Yeah.
And so there's this argument that the Sphinx looks like him, which New York Police Department chief forensic officer investigator Domingo, he went to Egypt, did this analysis, and guess what? The Sphinx is not Khafra at all. And so, yeah, it's kind of very flimsy arguments that originally kind of posed the idea that Khafra had built it, but those arguments don't really hold any weight. When we look at it, here's another view of the left paw where it was found. You get to see this boardwalk a little more. This is the inside of the left paw, and you can see all these different ages of repairs and different kinds of rock. A lot going on here. The Sphinx's paws were carved later, or these stones were added later. And you can see, compared to its original weathering on the body and the bedrock, it's very different.
Interesting how we're told in modern times that bricks and brick making came at certain dates, which of course the dates we can never rely on from science or history ever, because clearly this is beyond. They don't even know the actual age of the Sphinx completely. But what materials is the Sphinx and the body of her made of?
Well, it's all bedrock, so there's a few different members of this which are lighter and stronger, but basically it's all bedrock. Only the head sticks up above the surface, so the whole body was carved down from the above, and the body was carved out. And so actually we see that some of the stones that were pulled out from as this body was quarried down were used in the Sphinx temple, which you see in front here. So some of these stones here, we can tell came straight from the bedrock here. We can match the layers of stratus right to them. So we know the Sphinx temple was built at the same time. And a lot of the stones in it were from this quarry. And a lot of the stones in it were from other quarries. There's a lot of different kinds of stone used in this temple, which show that Aswan granite, all these different stones must have come from all over the place to build this temple. And clearly it must have been built at around the same time as the Sphinx. So that gives us a lot of a clue as to, this temple shows some of the most advanced stonework in all of Egypt as far as size of stone. And it's this very separate kind of techniques and styles compared to all these elaborately carved reliefs on all these temples everywhere else. This is what John was saying is looking like it's coming from a completely different age, way further back. And some of these stones used in this tell us that the temple was made at the same time. So we're seeing that some of the most advanced stonework in Egypt was done at the same time as the Sphinx was carved, which John has already shown just with the weathering pushes it way back. I mean, there was no rainfall anywhere near how much would be needed to weather this courtyard unless you go back many millennia before the first pharaohs, before even Old Kingdom.
Right. And this again is why we need experts who really are experts in their field, because what we're looking at is disclosure, again, on a different level, disclosure of the true history of our planet Earth. And that is why you and I are having a conversation, mate.
Yeah, and there's no overstating the importance of what John and Robert did right here. It just toppled the timeline in itself. This proves, these stones were pulled from out of the Sphinx courtyard, and we see this like very long, prolonged duration of heavy rainfall weathering the courtyard. So this weathering happened after it was quarried. Can't really argue that. Doesn't matter what kind of credentials you've got.
Yeah.
But the world didn't really pay attention until he got Robert Schoch and the PhDs kind of backing him up. And so they took it to the geologists, and they took it to the geological panel. And this is where they just got tons of geologists coming out and saying, you guys are right. Like hundreds of geologists were behind them. But all these Egyptologists and archaeologists were very against them and making all kinds of ridiculous, just no, that's not what it is. It's like the challenge came to the timeline though, where they couldn't really, this is kind of provided this foundation of an argument that the entire timeline was wrong. Yeah. And so all these other people started following suit and kind of working off the foundation John had built. So here's another kind of view you can see. But this was at the sunrise when we got to visit the Sphinx privately. Robert Schoch had never been inside the Sphinx temple ever since like the early 90s when he first filmed Mystery of the Sphinx with John. So he hadn't even been in there since then. It was a big, really, really special experience to be there with Schoch.
Yeah, and just very quickly, I know we have so many slides to cover. A lot of people looking at your pictures that you've gathered will not have known that there is a temple of the Sphinx that is in front of her because we rarely see that. So thank you for showing us that slide in particular.
Yeah, some of this context will really help give a visual. I'm glad I just went for doing the pictures because it'd be hard to tell without them. But like this, you can see that when you stand under the Great Pyramid, it hurts your neck to try and look up at the top. This is such an immense thing. I just got a couple. This is another at Giza, some machining marks that Chris Dunn was kind of talking about. There's another that, this is the Khafra pyramid, I think the middle one. And you see these people down here. It's just an immense structure. So much at Giza. The Khufu's boat, this was in the museum. It's now been moved to the Grand Egyptian Museum, but this boat is suggesting, not only this kind of symbolic representation of the boat of Osiris and all that, but also these boats went on the ocean, and they have like traces of corals and stuff that come from way outside the Mediterranean. These boats travel the world.
And very quickly, I'm always mindful of people that may have never seen this or know that Khufu and Khafre have two of the pyramids at Giza that are located next to the Sphinx, right or wrong?
Right. Yeah. Well, so they're attributed to the Great Pyramid is Akhet Khufu. It's called Khufu of the Horizon. It's the Great Pyramid is attributed to Khufu, and the middle one to Khafra, and then the third to Menkaure. And so Khafra was Khufu's son, I believe, and then Menkaure, I think, was Khafra's son. But these are all, later pharaohs, and I don't think any of the three of them really built the Great Pyramids. I think they all kind of came back from this earlier time. And this is part of the plateau, kind of showing that it wasn't just the pyramids being built, but also the entire plateau is these stones that are sometimes 6-8 feet deep, and there's sometimes 4 or 5 layers of stones that deep. So the entire plateau is built of stones. And this is one of the boat graves. So there's these holes in the plateau where they buried these boats, and they let them be covered in with sand to be protected forever. Actually, this Khufu's boat here, it's considered by some to be the oldest organic artifact on the planet, made of wood, because it's so dry there and it's protected by the sand. So there's a whole other part of the Giza Plateau people don't realize. Here you can see some of these black stones are being beautifully just tucked together. I'm a stonemason too. I've done a lot of stonework and landscaping stuff, and I just have such an appreciation for there's all different colors of stone, different types of stone throughout different parts of it. It's not just the pyramid. This I was just going to mention quick was Praveen Mohan has this great channel.
That guy. I love that guy. I could watch him all day long.
He's
Praveen.
amazing. And he's been censored highly from Facebook and YouTube. And I mean, his videos are nothing but pure original content of the highest degree. This is him. This is the name of this video I pulled this from, but this one was too much. He shows that at Angkor Wat, in the central tower of Angkor Wat, there is a hole at the top of the central peak, which is inches wide, but shoots 90 feet straight down to this chamber carved out of stone, and which originally had this stone box in the center. So once in a while, the sun will pass right over the zenith point of this temple, and a beam of sunlight will strike down and hit this box that used to exist there. This is a reconstruction, but based on another box that's similar in another temple nearby. So essentially you have, just like the Great Pyramid, you have a king's chamber type room carved out, which has shafts pointing towards the sky, which can catch a specific light and hit this box with it.
Right.
So I think we're dealing with the same type of science,
right,
you know.
Technology across the planet. Now, Angkor Wat, for people that don't know, is not in Egypt. Can you tell us what Angkor Wat is, where it is, and the difference that it's not a pyramid, it's actually a temple, isn't it?
Right. Yes. I mean, it is technically it's a pyramidal temple, I'd say, but the spires on it are even more perfectly. They pinpoint the path of the sun rising, and then the sun lands right at the top of them. And about its location, it's very interesting because it's in Cambodia. As Graham Hancock pointed out, it's exactly 72 degrees around the planet from Giza, which means it's exactly 1/5 of the way around the planet from Giza. So if you have a 5-pointed star, you lay it over the Earth, Giza's 1 point, and Angkor would be the other. So yeah, that's a really important point, is to point out that they are all kind of aligned to a certain degree, and all these temples might actually be one singular global project. Anyway, I wanted to shout him out quick because I love his videos, and this was so good. Definitely want people to watch this. And Graham has really helped too. He's you know, he's been very vocal about how much John West means to him. He was you know, came and visited John when he was sick. Graham has really expanded this outward from just Egypt to the whole world, especially, you know, from Fingerprints of the Gods, his early book. He helped really make it into more of a global discussion and showing the connections. And of course, he just came out with Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, which is the talk of the town. Everyone is talking about it now. And this was on 11/11, of course. That's when we tried to record this interview last, but it didn't work out.
Right.
It would have been right in concert with Graham's new show, which has been great. You know, it's like a very mainstream kind of, it can, you know, it's reached #1 on IMDb. anyway, I'm going to mention this a little bit more later, but he
I'm happy
definitely,
for him, Trevor. I'm happy for Graham Hancock. He's a Brit. He's been doing this research and revelations and disclosure for so many years. I met him in the 1990s, and I know he's been really sick lately. And I'm so happy to see him like front line where he should be, #1 up there with Freddie Silver and others. So this is beautiful. Thank you for including him.
yeah, I really appreciate him. And of course, I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything on anyone, with anyone, but, he's really done a great job. He really deserves a kind of lifetime achievement award for this. Like, and I'm so glad he made it to Netflix. I'm so glad it's hitting the mainstream, and he's not going as deep as he could. He's just putting this thing that's very much asking the questions we need to move on. So I met him a couple times as yeah, just by knowing John. I met a lot of these people I'm going to talk about. The first time I met him, I got to talk to him for a while and really thank him for stuff and talk about John. So I'm going to mention him a little bit later in this story. But here we have the Dendera zodiac as we get into talking about just Egyptian astrology in general. And this is Athanasius Kircher's commission or drawing of the ceiling at Dendera, which is just such a beautiful temple. And this is all blackened out by soot and smoke, probably from torches, but they're cleaning it up right now. And this drawing has a great view. So it's important to recognize that even from the very earliest times, they had these symbols like Taurus and Aries and Scorpio and Leo. These symbols were known from the very earliest times. In John's book, even before Serpent in the Sky brings that up, it's called A Case for Astrology. And it shows that these symbols were used all the way back then. They go back as far as human language does. So the zodiac hasn't really changed in a long time. And then we have these from all over the world, which are representations of a kind of man with these two dots, which are depictions of Orion accenting his belt. And this one is by Wayne Herschel, who I'm going to get into in a minute a little more deeply, but he's showing the Dogon symbol from West Africa. They've preserved this symbol of Orion. I actually have this tattoo on my back, the Dogon symbol. But you can see that it's all over the world. And yeah, Elena Denon put this image in her book. I have this image in my book. I don't know who first put this all together. I wish I could credit them, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it's showing Orion all over the world being pretty important through these things. And the Dogon, especially, or this remote tribe in West Africa who had knowledge of the stars parallel to the Egyptians. So this is part of what the Dogon talk about. They show a petroglyph where this carving shows Sirius A and Sirius B orbiting each other. And this is the path they make as a helix, kind of moving through space together as they orbit each other. And you're not supposed to know that Sirius B even exists if you don't have a telescope, but because it's invisible to the naked eye, but somehow they drew this diagram, and this is basically like the NASA or the modern data version of the same thing. So somehow they knew that Sirius was a binary star system and that it made this path through the sky. They knew a lot else. And I would shout out, actually, here I got, this is Laird Scranton's book, Primal Wisdom for the Ancients. But he has a lot of books about the Dogon, which John helped him get a lot of that stuff out, giving him forwards. Laird's great. He's been writing a few books about not only the Dogon, but ancient cosmological systems all across the planet, from India and Ganesha, and a lot of these things he's connecting together. So really great stuff. But we see some of this knowledge that's coming from like 3000 BC. It's like 5,000 years old. The Dogon tribe out there in Africa have just held on to this knowledge because they know it's important. And then you have, here we go, the Orion mystery by Adrian Gilbert and Robert Bauval. Together, they showed this correlation of the three Great Pyramids to Orion. You've probably all seen this at this point, but you know, he's not wrong. Read the Orion mystery if you have any doubts, but this is a very clear kind of correlation. And we see that at Teotihuacan, Mexico as well, with the Pyramid of the Moon, Pyramid of the Sun, and Pyramid of Kukulkan. So this is in Mexico City. We see the Orion blueprint. and as well as at the pyramids in China, the Great White Pyramid of China here, and these other two stars. I think all three of these are really quite clearly representing Orion's belt once again. And even this one, where, yeah, there's other interesting imprints that seem to be marking Orion, and using kind of black cube symbolism in these memorials here. But moving along, this is Nabta Playa, and this is a stone circle, much like Stonehenge in southern Egypt. This is way, way deep out into the Sahara. And I can't begin to go as deep as I'd love into this, but I'm going to shout out this other book. This is called, it's showing it reversed. I don't know if that's doing that the same to everyone else, but the Origin Map. So this is by Thomas Brophy, who is an astrophysicist and kind of decoded what was being shown at Nabta Playa. But this stone circle, basically, it's located exactly on the tropic, and it kind of essentially ends up showing the two extreme ends of the precessional cycle, using Orion as a reference. And so it's kind of two sets of stones in the middle here. And when one of them lines up, the other one does not. And when the other lines up, the other one does not. So basically,
I just want to say very quickly, when I look at that kind of isosceles triangle there in the middle, you've got 1, 2, 3 stones. When you look at the map in Britain and you look at like Glastonbury, Stonehenge and Avebury, which were all very pivotal on the ley lines, but also representing stone circles. When I look at that, I'm like, oh, wow, that looks like what I look at on the map of Great Britain. Again, just to point that out, because it's everywhere. The mapping, the star mapping on our whole planet is so designed on purpose. So it's something and then marry with our own minds. I'm sure other people out there looking at your beautiful slideshow here will also figure out for themselves too.
Oh yeah, definitely about to get deeper into that. Absolutely, it's everywhere. This using the stars to show a lot of times when these things were dated from and when they lined up to the stars that they're representing. This one, without going too deep in, I'll just say the head and shoulder stars of Orion's belt have not aligned to those stars since 16,500 BC. So that's the last time they actually lined up. So if they're actually placed when they lined up, it was back then. But basically, they use these two sets of stone to describe the outer, the two extremes of the precessional cycle, which is 26,000 years long, approximately. So they're kind of showing the positions of these two sets of stars 13,000 years apart. And not to go too deep, but there's other stones at Nabta Playa on the sand there that have a viewing stone, and these same six stones are represented on the horizon. And basically, if you look from the viewing stone, it aligns to the point on the horizon where each one of these stars rose at a teleological rising point at its own birth within the precessional cycle, as it's considered. So they basically pinpointed 6 specific times within this 26,000 year cycle. And if they put the stones there when they actually aligned, that means they place these stones every few thousand years, place another one. It doesn't make sense, But if they did it any other way, they would have needed computer imaging programs on a laptop. Is the only way we can see the stars of the past today. So either way, something doesn't make sense. And then there's also this third, and I have to mention, you're absolutely locked into these 6 stars. There's no doubt, because they're all represented outside the circle as well, but they're all different distances from this viewing stone, as well as showing different sight lines from the viewing stone. So basically, after a little bit of sorting through this, Thomas Brophy, he discovered that these stones were actually placed relative to the distance to those actual stars. So the Egyptians showed here that they knew the relative distance to each of these 6 stars from Earth by placing the stones that distance from the viewing stone.
And did you say that this was also connected to the Tropic of Cancer?
Yes, this is located. It was located exactly on the tropic. They just moved it, which is upsetting to me because there was a lot of stuff buried underground here too. And this was kind of a whole planetarium or a model of the whole universe, a galaxy, or it's a very advanced thing. And I don't think they moved any of the buried stones that were part of it. And they took it off of the tropic. I'm not sure if it's still on the tropic, but it moved definitely closer. They moved all the stones, and I guess they were afraid of vandals or something. But yeah, it's very important the spot it was located in, and it shows extremely advanced knowledge of the stars. So has to be included with their overall kind of cosmology here. Anyway, I'll move on. This is a picture from Robert Edward Grant. I added this Fibonacci spiral in myself afterward, but he showed this line is the longest line on planet Earth that you can walk in a straight line without crossing any major bodies of water. And this line is divided at phi by the Great Pyramid. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of mind-blowing to me in itself, because the Great Pyramid is the center of the world in this sense. That's pretty mind-blowing that it does land perfectly on this phi marker.
Beautiful. Listen, while we're going into Fibonacci sequence and numbers, thank you. Do you know, of course, you've already thought of this. I was going to ask you, could you share with people what Fibonacci is, what the sequencing of the numbers is, how we can know we're in a Fibonacci sequence, and that's your very next slide. So please.
Yeah, that's right where I'm going. Perfect. This is a book cover art I did for a friend of mine, actually. It's for a book called Eco-Mathematics Education that he wrote with a co-author. That's a textbook for children, kind of, or a curriculum for teaching. And it gets into the Fibonacci sequence and natural mathematics. So I pointed out with this actual sunflower that if you count these rows going in this way, you get 55. You count them this way, you get 34. You can count it on this. This is actually, you can count it on that one, but 34 and 55 are both Fibonacci sequence numbers. So this whole sequence is derived from adding 1 to 1 equals 2, 2 to 1 equals 3, 3 to 5, you know, it keeps going on in this sequence. And 34 and 55 are two of the numbers that nature uses to balance itself. So it's very clear to see in the sunflower. It's a little bit about how it's, you know, these numbers are part of the universe and they're worked into it. And so a lot of people have noted that the speed of light within a vacuum, at least, travels at this rate, and it happens to be the same as the Great Pyramid. Latitude, north. Honestly, you could cut it off at 5 or 6 digits here before you get into like feet and inches and microns over here. But, you know, basically, if you did turn this exactly into a latitude, line of latitude, it's going to cross straight through the Great Pyramid. And basically within feet of the apex, actual absolute center of the Great Pyramid. So were they trying to tell us that encode the speed of light in the latitude the Great Pyramid is placed at? I say yes. A lot of people say no because they think, you know, the Egyptians didn't even know about meters per second. They didn't know about meters or seconds, and I beg to differ. And
we will assume, how the hell do we know? We only know what we're told by others. We don't know what they knew, which is why we got to have people like you beautiful rogue researching archaeologists, you coming forward and saying you disagree. You think that it is a matching equation. You know they did know meters and seconds and all that. Of course they bloody did.
And you know, it's just like Nabta Playa. Usually when they're showing you something this extraordinary, they do not leave it up to chance. They put it in multiple times. And so in my book, I did not just write about this, not one or two. I wrote about 3 different ways in which they encoded the speed of light into the structure of the Great Pyramid. I was just talking recently to Gary Osborne. Actually, I'm going to throw this book out here too, Rendlesham Enigma. I haven't gotten this one yet, but Gary Osborne started talking to me a lot about this stuff as well. He said he's found 9 examples of the speed of light in the Great Pyramid. Okay,
just to step back a bit, it's worth including all of these scholars and authors that you're so kindly including as part of your research. Tell us just briefly, what is the Rendlesham Enigma, please?
Well, I haven't read this one yet, but it's a
But okay,
fat
what is the Rendlesham event then? How about that?
This is Jim Peniston and Gary Osborne co-authoring this, but mostly Jim Peniston's book about these experiences he had, contact type experiences and these symbols that he encountered. And he ended up working with Gary. Gary was telling me a bit more about this book recently, but I've kind of had this on my radar for a long time. And I definitely think it ties into a lot of the mathematics of Giza, the Great Pyramid. And so, yeah, it's very, yeah, it's very much something I haven't gotten into yet, but seems very related to all the stuff I was searching for. Gary was telling me amazing stuff as we were talking the other day. So yeah, one of the things he said was, I found 9 instances of the speed of light here. But anyway, in my book, I started trying to prove that they knew the meter. And so this is the next slide. I drew this picture. And the truth is there's a geometric relationship between the meter, the foot, and the sacred cubit of Egypt. And remember, the sacred cubit, this is the tensor ring I gave you, is cut to this length too, derived from the Great Pyramid. But you can see in this one image that the 3 can be derived from any one of them through this geometric relationship.
And just very quickly, again, as we're bringing people that are just coming to this knowledge, like you are advanced and people watching this are not. So I just want to help as much as possible to bring everybody along with us. What we're looking at here, this geometric looks like a flower. There's many people that would say, hey, that looks very similar to the flower of life. Now, there's been a lot of disinformation thrown in where there's something called the daisy of death. And I'm not insulting any authors. If you want to get insulted out there, guys, that's up to you. This is original geometry on our planet. It's beautiful. It's not modern trying to figure out, well, it's called the daisy of death because it's in, it's out, it's the Death Star, it's propulsion. No, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. Please continue.
Yeah, well, this does actually start with the seed of life. You can see right here is the first kind of flowering of the flower of life with these 6 circles in the middle. That's what it's built on. Then you have another circle here with this pentagon off of it, which gives you the meter. So it does make this outer circle kind of unique, but it's absolutely starting with the seed of life and the flower of life. Yeah, I've seen these things people are saying about this, and I'm no, you know, the flower of life is the root of all sacred geometry. It's the root of all creation processes and everything that exists. So
like,
yeah, I don't really
look at one cell, a human cell under a microscope. That's it. That's all I'll say there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this part's really exciting, and it's kind of one of those things that almost makes me feel justified in being a guest on your show. It makes me fit in with the other kind of guests you have a little more. But I saw this picture someone had let out online. It wasn't this one, but I wanted to draw my own picture of it. And so this is my drawing that I made based on someone else's. And the day I drew this image, this happened.
Wow.
Barbary Castle. And I drew the picture. I saw this crop circle and I just dropped it into Photoshop. And the outer ring aligned to the crop circle itself, you get these 2 hexagrams on the inside are matching the 2 hexagrams of the crop circle. And you can see I have this inner circle here too. What happens when you align that? You hit the other 2 hexagons within the shape. So I was kind of like, I think something's going on. And I made this meme, and I was posting in all the crop circle groups being like, guys, I think I might be onto something. And showing this, all this happened within the space of a couple hours. And literally as I put this meme out showing like, I think this has something to do with these, you know, unit relationships being expressed geometrically, this happened within hours. The crop circle makers came back and erased half of the triangles in the shape as I was like figuring this stuff out. So here you can see the whole thing kind of. This is the outer circle aligned, the inner circle aligned. This is the original crop circle, and then this is what they came back and did after.
And look how they're creating dimensions, density within that kind of, you know, 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever density it ends up being. That's so stunning.
Yeah, blew my mind. All of this happened within a few hours, within one day. So I ended up actually realizing that Barbary Castle had another crop circle not too long ago, a few years ago, which was also a mathematical crop circle. And this is it. So this is a circle that obviously divides itself up into 10 segments. And I don't have the guy's name who decoded this, but brilliant. The 10 segments, if you start from the center, you come out and you go 3 segments, and then there's this dot, and then you go 1, and then you go 4, and then 1, 5, 9. This crop circle describes pi to 10 decimal points.
Pi.
3.14159 and on to ... at the end. So this crop circle is showing pi, and it appeared in the same exact field, I believe, the same property at least, as this more recent one, which was just this past summer. It was in August, I think. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe there's some mathematicians that personally like this field and like to put these circles here. I thought it was quite stunning. They even have the decimal point put in here, so pretty wild. Oh, it's just a picture of Pythagoras I drew, and some of these illustrations I drew for my book. This is Teotihuacan. I thought I'd stick some of these in quick.
Slow down. You drew this? You drew
Yeah, this is a view from the Pyramid of the Moon at Teotihuacan, and you see all these pyramids.
So guess what? Yesterday, Ketsa Shah, who was the Mayan shaman at our conference, posted a photograph of Teotihuacan, and every single one of these pyramids that you've drawn here had a UFO craft on top of it with a major craft on the major pyramid there. How very, very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that picture. I actually shared that, and I was like, I just titled it soon, or very soon. You know?
Yeah, it's beautiful how you're getting, you're validating yourself, because we wonder, can I do this? Am I a scholar, or am I just trying to insert myself? No, this comes from past lives for you, clearly. Now, Chris O'Connor, who is the man who brought us the free energy device called the Deems device, who was a speaker at our conference and a really, really super close friend of mine, he says that the Uma was created at this temple, at this pyramidal structure. But that is another, but it's you, Ketsa Shah, and Chris O'Connor right now with a focus on this particular, and even Dr. Michael Salla mentioned it at the conference too. So just to say there's areas to highlight, and you just happen to coincidentally, no such thing as a coinky-dink, ladies and gentlemen. We might think there is, but all the information comes at the right time, at the same time. And, don't worry if you can't keep up with this, if it's kind of like too much. It's not too much. You can just go back and have another look, and you don't need to understand everything. But as we all go forward, and as we are understanding the true history of our planet, and as people around the world bring their own ideas together without being told this is this and this is that, because so much of our true history is missing, just take your time, just take your time. And it doesn't mean that everyone is right about everything. For those of you that want to expand a little more, I love that Trevor Grassi raised the Fibonacci sequence numbers. They're really fascinating to look at, because everything in our universe is spiraling out. It doesn't just make a circle, a circle, a circle. It's always doing this. It's always doing this. Okay, darling, back to you.
Yeah, sorry, I just ran out for a second. Yeah, so I've done some of my own illustrations in here. I try to get in, but I've got a couple more of them to show. But this is pretty well known that the Great Pyramid at Egypt has the exact same base perimeter of this one, the Pyramid of the Sun at Mexico. So that's about 3,000 feet. Graham Hancock brought attention to this. And essentially, if you take half of this perimeter, so A, B, C, so half of that, if you make that a straight line and put it on the equator, it's equal to exactly 1/86,400th of the equator, which means that that distance is how far a single point on the equator moves around the core of the planet in 1 second. So they knew about seconds, they knew about minutes, they knew about days and hours, and that's part of the sexagesimal system of base 60 number system using minutes and seconds. Goes along with geometry great, because the circle divided by 360 degrees works well with that. And you see a few of these harmonic numbers that I got very deep into investigating, and we'll talk about more in the future maybe, but these are all part of a system of harmonics, basically.
Yes, which is so urgently important, again, to understand. And if we just look at that number 432 there, that's kind of buried in that little body of text, 432, we're told, is the actual frequency harmonic of the human body. This is where we oscillate at perfect vibratory resonance and perfect health.
Right.
So I love that you've included that there.
Right. The 432 is what, you know, the entire perimeter of one of these pyramids equals to 432. When you multiply it by this number, you get the actual equator, the length of the equator. Yeah. So that's definitely being shown as an important number. And you can drop the zeros or add the zeros. It's the 432 or the 864 or the 144. It's whatever's before the zeros that really matters, because these can be harmonics to each other. So yeah, the perimeter, the entire perimeter, that's the distance. It'll take 2 seconds to travel on the equator, just based on the Earth turning. So it's mind-blowing that, you know, the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan have the same base perimeter at all. But then you realize they're based on seconds of the Earth. And it was the Babylonians or the Assyrians or even the Sumerians that first divided the day up into 86,400 seconds. So yeah, those intervals were known back then. Those units were used. And that's what the Pyramid of the Sun looks like. Those are people up at the top there. Those are all actual people that look like specks on this pyramid. This is another of my illustrations, just the pyramids of the world. Wow. I'm gonna keep moving through here. This is the grid, the shape of the grid, of the energy grid of the planet. And this is an icosahedron. It's a combination of the icosahedron and dodecahedron. So the icosahedron is all made of these triangles, and the dodecahedron of these pentagons. So, you know, the triangles points rest in the middle of each pentagon and vice versa. This is the shape of the ley lines in the energy system of the whole planet. So I made an illustration of that laid over the Earth, and this is based on the Becker and Hagen's Earth grid map they made. And here you can just see a lot going on. You see Giza as one of these nodes. I don't know if you can see us. You can see over here Angkor Wat and China. All these different sacred sites around are marked out on this thing, basically. And all the ley lines, you see Area 51 and Sedona and the Grand Canyon right here. And of course, the Galactic and Spiritual Informers connection right here.
Oh my God. Can I share something with you quickly? Can we go back a slide to the left? So I told people an experience I had in Kauai, on the island of Kauai, where there is a particular beach. It's at the very, very far end, kind of southwest. And I went there, and as I walked on the beach, I was told it was sacred. I was told this is where the souls of the planet leave. And then I saw this like a mirror in the undergrowth reflecting. It let me see it for a second. And then this gigantic craft uncloaked. Now, if we take this image and we turn it on its side so that it's wider, that's what I saw. It had a few more little, let's say, triangles to more kind of geometric patterns. It was kind of a very pale pinky mauve color. But when I look at that, Trevor, that's what I saw on Kauai, cloaked. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of just drew the forward half of this, so the back half of it is invisible, as if it's kind of opaque. So it's a little bit easier to see, but you would see the whole back if this was transparent. And you can see it in this as well. You can see these pentagons of the dodecahedron and these triangles of the icosahedron. So they're all thin spots in time space, basically. These are all where these portals can be located and different things. They're all no-fly zones around the whole planet. This one that I believe got melted down somehow, or something happened to it when Atlantis, you know, the real final destruction happened. I think that's why there's off the coast of Cuba, there's this sunken city, which I'm very interested in, and I think has similar halls of records to Giza. But anyway, you can see how this whole grid is laid out, and all these temples are on these. And here I just shared a few of these memes I've collected of showing the similarities all across the world, these different things. You can check these out later on the page if you want, but these are pins that are stuck in between these different stones, and then you stick other stones on top of this. It locks it in with these metal pins that hold the
Yeah.
stones together.
Yeah, I saw these also in Egypt, and I saw these in Cusco, Peru.
Yep. Yep. I've got a few of these pictures of that myself. This is just another. These are some dolmens all over. I just love all these pictures. This one's great. I don't know who put this together. I would love to credit them, but great compilation. You see these tiny adjuster pins, you know. And yeah, this is a great one too. Again, I don't know who made this originally, but it's been going around for a while. It really shows how this is a very kind of organic process, almost like these are growing out or softened and spreading and filling the space. This is why you can't stick a razor blade in here. So here's some kind of looking like Cappadocia in Turkey, where looks like someone took a hot knife to butter to basically sculpt the earth.
Yeah.
This is Simon Davies' illustration. He's showing the pyramids all over the world and how they align onto this grid. So this is a great one.
That's a really good one.
This is one of my pictures from Caral, which is thought to be possibly the oldest city in all of South America, but it's definitely got this Giza kind of layout with these super weathered pyramids. And these are a couple of the pictures that I got from Peru on this side and Egypt on this side, which I'll just go through quick. This is at the coffer of the middle pyramid. You can see how it's bulging out, and then afterwards they smooth this out. So this is very interesting to see it mid-process, and I think this was left here for us to see intentionally. You see these little driplets of excess mass, just like we have in Peru. Got a few more pictures of this, but here's more comparisons. You just see Peru and Egypt, same kind of deal. This is at the Assyrian. This is one of my favorite pictures I got in all of Egypt, because you can see exactly how it's smoothed out afterwards. So this is on the middle pyramid, on the copper pyramid. So yeah, very interesting. Here's another one. Ollantaytambo versus the Assyrian and Saqqara. And here's some of my pictures of these hinge pins, like holding the stones together. Okay, that's the first gallery. I kind of have this broken up into a couple galleries. And yeah, so this is the page that has this whole gallery on it. I'm not quite sure what to do, because I have to actually really go to the bathroom very quick. I don't know what to do. I've tried my hardest not to do this, but
okay, well, just hit pause, Trevor. Just hit pause.
Okay, and we're back. I guess, are you seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
Or, okay, with the skull. Okay, so this is a Paracas museum. I got this picture of this skull here.
No, it's not the skull. It's the keys and the links in the stone. The last slide is still up.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
There we are.
Okay, cool. So this is the Paracas Museum, one of the skulls there. I showed up here one day after Brian Forrester had just left, and I almost got to meet him here, but I got to see all these skulls he was working at. I also got some pictures from Mexico City at the museum in Mexico City. Here's some more from Paracas, and just
okay. Let's take a pause here. Okay, great picture review. Now, a lot of people, we're told, like, let's take Akhenaten and Nefertiti. In particular, they were reputed to have the elongated skulls, right, in Egypt. But also in modern day India, there is a thing where parents will bind the head of their child. They're called the rat children. So we don't want it to make it too romantic, because it clearly is a thing, but it's also a modern day thing where they want to make money for the children on the streets in India. When it comes to Egypt, we are told that the elites had these beautiful elongated skulls. They were from elsewhere, potentially. They were a high divine bloodline. I just don't want to skip past such an important point, because this is such a powerful photograph. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Yeah, great point. This is, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Mos Eisley spaceport in Star Wars, because it seems like there was all kinds of different races in Peru in ancient times, and the assortment of skulls here really show it. This next picture gives a little more, actually. You can see this one with the heart-shaped kind of what's going on there. You've got some with hair still on them. You've got some that are just big and normal looking otherwise. You've got some that have this giant brow bone thing.
Yeah.
You've got some that don't have any cranial sutures at all. They're just one big domed plate. And I'm sorry, but that's not a human being.
Of course. I'd be
It's
sorry.
something different. And as you say, there's a skull binding, which, you know, a lot of people are going to attribute all of this to skull binding. No, this skull binding was to mimic the gods and to make their children look more like these beings who, you know, it's been shown that you can never really increase the overall interior volume of a skull by binding it. You can change the shape of it, but these skulls, they have twice, three times the capacity for a brain. They have huge, huge spaces for a brain in here. No way you can do that by binding a skull from birth. So these are two different things, and the real skulls are very easy to tell. A lot of them like don't have one or either of those sutures, which really just genetically different, you know, very different. And you have so many different variations of them just here, but there's a basic separation between the ones that have this kind of big front brow thing and the ones that don't. But these are just, you know, yeah, I think they're related to this star knowledge and everywhere where it manifests around the world, and definitely part of the equation. And like you say, of course, it's in Egypt. And these are a bunch who, I hope I haven't mislabeled any of these. These are all obviously people with interesting shaped heads. You know, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, you know, Tutankhamun's supposed to be their son. And these three characters I've just learned a lot more about. I've always been very, very interested in these three in the Amarna period of Egypt, where Akhenaten was really the first monotheist and the first one to believe in the Aten as this single life force creator type energy. He really was before Moses, before anyone, talking about a single God type consciousness, and really bringing forward some stuff that would change the world a great deal later. So this is the first one. So that was just a short little gallery. Keep going on here. So now we're getting into Wayne Herschel, and I love Wayne Herschel. I've got this book I'll shout out, his book Hidden Records. Really great stuff. This is his map, and you can see we don't just have Giza with the Sphinx and pyramids aligning to Orion and Leo, but you can see that they're turned the wrong direction right now. But if you twist these back to about 10,500 BC, which was the dawn of the age of Leo, the three pyramids would align perfectly to Orion's belt, and Leo and the Sphinx would be pointing directly in the sky up at Leo. So this is this time marker that pinpoints the whole scene to about the dawn of the age of Leo, the last one, which was about 10,500 years ago. And you see that in the greater scheme, the Nile is the Milky Way, and this is Sirius up here, the Abu Rawash pyramid. These are Aldebaran. Coming down here, we have Abu Sir has the Pleiades. And so if you go further south than this, here's a second map Wayne Herschel put together. And you see from the Pleiades, you're coming down, and then at Saqqara, you have the Andromeda complex, and then these two triangles here, and down here, these other pyramids. You got like 50 of the brightest stars this side of the Milky Way, all mapped out as pyramids this side of the Nile River, like 50 pyramids at least, you know. So I don't think Wayne Herschel's wrong about this. I think he's really cracked some codes, and goes a lot deeper than that. But here you can see the Saqqara, Andromeda, here's the pyramids. Like these are all constellations, and the Egyptians called them stars. You know, this is all as above, so below, Hermetic doctrine, mapping the stars onto the ground, just like you know, Hermes told Asclepius in his famous text, like Egypt is an image of the heavens. Absolutely, you know. Let's take them at their word.
Totally. And again, I'm really keen for people to understand, like Hermes, the Hermetic codes, and Thoth, Thoth, they're saying it's the same person. Then we come across and we look at Quetzalcoatl and others, and we recognize that one of the sleeping giants that we're told about that is under Florida right now is coming into awareness of itself. And then we're hearing the different names, but and when I'm not hearing people saying Thoth so much or Hermes. And so I just wanted to include that there because
And
with
I
us.
love that Elena brings it back also. She's mentioned Jehuti was the original term before Thoth.
Yes, Jehuti is
Thoth
his
came
full
from
name.
Jehuti.
Jehuti is the name, is Thoth.
Ah,
Jehuti is the ancient name, isn't it?
yeah, Jehuti is the name of the netter actually, and Thoth and Hermes, these things I think later became more like titles of people who had kind of like Christ, who had attained this certain consciousness and gained this as a title. So they'd be called Hermes or Thoth. So it might refer to other people in history, but Jehuti itself is the principle of wisdom incarnate in a human being, essentially. The principle of knowledge and writing and arts and sciences, all this civilizing technology or knowledge embodied in a human being. So it's a netter, it's really a force of nature that's represented. And Jehuti is the root of the word Thoth. And think about the word Thoth, it's basically the word thought. Thoth is thought. Sometimes it's pronounced that way, even or Toth, but basically means thought. The word netter itself means nature. It's actually pronounced more like nature, as Muhammad Ibrahim pointed out. It's absolutely the root of the word nature. So all the netters are forces or aspects of nature. And Jehuti is the principle of wisdom embodied in a human being. So yeah, very important. And I do think it's very much related to Quetzalcoatl and all these characters on the other side of the world that were bringing civilizing doctrines of information that basically started all these early writing systems and very much tied together. And actually Jehuti, it's also the source of the word Jed, like the Jed column is one thing you'll see in Egypt, or the Jed eye, like the Eye of Horus is a thing you'll see. And there's literally a word that is Jedi, Jedhi, Jedi, that means bearer of the column of light or pillar of light, like a lightsaber that a Jedi has. And it means the chakras illumined up the column of the spine. So this is about people who have opened their chakras, opened their third eye. They're known as, in ancient Egypt, the Jedi. Pretty interesting. That's the same root as Jehuti.
This is so important, Trevor. I love the way that you're presenting this information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think in future interviews, maybe I'll get a lot more into modern fiction and how much is not fiction in modern fiction, but Star Wars has so many very real kind of references. I mean, think about the opposite of a Jedi. What are they called? Sith, Seth, Set, right?
Indeed. Yeah,
Well, the
not going to
Jedi.
rush this. We're going to give you a chance to get your mainframe stills here, and then we will definitely do a second broadcast, you and I, and then we will share intel like that, where we can help match up. And then I'll share when I brought back the skull, the helmets, the crowns of Upper Egypt that go up and curve back like this, as opposed to the helmets or the crowns of Lower Egypt, which come up and dip in the middle. A being followed me back from Egypt, a tall silver man who was all one piece, like the suit he wore was like his skin. He was completely silver, and he had the crown of Upper Egypt. And we'll share that next time we get together on that side of things. But for now, please continue your beautiful presentation.
Oh yeah, that's great stuff. Those two crowns, they're also representing these different parts of the pineal gland, the thalamus and the pineal gland, all these different parts of the third eye body within the brain. You put all these hats together, you start to see what looks like the actual full set of glands that is the third eye. Very interesting stuff we can get into in the future on that. And yeah, I was going to say it's quite interesting if you look at Khnum, who is, I kind of think of Khnum as this netter of almost DMT, pretty much. of this border between life and death, and he's like the netter of the pineal gland almost itself, of the third eye. And you go to Esna, the temple of Khnum, you see his hat. His hat has all the parts on it, these all the different anatomical designs of your neural anatomy coded into these hats, these shapes. It's brilliant. And the cryptology goes so deep in this. So yeah, it's great stuff. Getting back to Herschel here, he brings a lot of attention to the Pleiades and this triangle that the Pleiades makes with this other two stars that are very bright. One of them is often portrayed as eclipsed. And this will come back around to what you're saying about Stonehenge. Here's Stonehenge. That's Stonehenge. That's the winterborn Pleiades barrows. And this is this other lake group barrows. And you see this triangle here, the Pleiades and these two other stars. Now you see the two of them together, you know, this is the portrayal of the stars they're telling us to pay attention to right at Stonehenge. Here's Tikal, same thing. Tikal in Guatemala, you have these two pyramids here and here, and then plaza of 7 temples. This is the Pleiades over here. Then you have Egypt at Abu Sir with, these are not found yet. So Wayne Herschel suggesting we might find 2 other ruins of pyramids right here, but basically the Pleiades pointing over to this sun temple. And this is just, I'll just skip through this because you just see it over and over, you know. The Egyptians used this leg of the lamb kind of symbol to depict the Pleiades at times. And this is pretty clear from the Dendera zodiac. If you go back to that slide at some point, you can see they kind of depict the Pleiades as this thing that looks like a lamb chop leg kind of thing. Anyway, it's pointing, this is Lalibela, the giant stone temple carved straight down into the bedrock is a big plus sign, and the other temple. Here it is in Rome. You see the city on 7 hills. The 7 hills are the Pleiades. And they're pointing to this star right here and this other one here. This is, you know, the Vatican, and the obelisk right here is Orion as this X form with the belt pointing to this star, and the Pleiades pointing to it as well. This is him kind of depicting the Key of Solomon, another more of these X's representing Orion pointing to the Pleiades and to this other star. You see it at St. Peter's Square. And this is on the Gilgamesh tablet. You have, again, the 7 stars, this eclipse star, and then here you have Taurus over here, this bull too, which is part of this. You see Taurus, this is potentially a bull, I don't know, maybe that's something else, but with a kind of Anunnaki guy above with this Dorji looking trident energy thing. You have the Pleiades, you have the eclipse star, and you have this other star here. And you've got the tree of life thing and this clearly interdimensional kind of craft thing, I would say. This is a Sumerian, you know, cylinder scroll. So the cylinder scrolls are just these cylinders. You roll them out in a piece of clay, a couple inches wide, and you get these images. All of them have the Pleiades. All of them have this other bright star and this other eclipse kind of star. All of them have these flying winged kind of ship looking things. So Wayne Herschel, he's got Perseus here at Angkor Wat is what he's seeing. And he's basically saying that instead of Orion, they used Perseus as a waypointer to the Pleiades because Perseus rose in the sky before the Pleiades at this part of the world. So it was easier to use this one. But basically through this last sight line here, you have represented here, it's pointing through Angkor Wat over to Relus, which is known as the Temple of the 7 Ancestors, or something like that, like another set of Pleiadian temples, 7 temples together. You can look up city on 7 hills, and that's the description used to describe Rome often, but you'll find that there are actually like thousands of cities built on 7 hills across the world. It's the Pleiades, it's the 7 sisters. It's very important. Here's Cydonia Mars. You have the face on Mars, you have the 5-sided pyramid there, and you have the Pleiades. So
Amazing.
I'm sorry. This is just too perfect. Look at this. You have that triangle pointing up to Orion. You have these three mounds on Mars pointing to the Pleiades in this triangle of these three stars. I'm just saying, I think Wayne Herschel's right about this. Look at this alignment. Look how perfect the Pleiades are shown.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll tell you, I'm sold. I think he's onto something.
Totally. Yeah.
This,
You mentioned you mentioned Perseus. You know, at some points during this year, we have the beautiful meteor cosmic showers, Perseus being one of them, the Perseoids. They're sometimes known as. I just found that interesting again, as people are putting their own links together. It's just nice to kind of drop that in for someone to use.
you know, Graham Hancock in Fingerprints of the Gods, he thought he found some kind of a Draco correlation at Angkor Wat, but I've talked to Wayne Herschel about this, and I said, "What do you think about, you know, Graham's Draco correlation?" He was like, "Yeah, I talked to Graham about that," and I think mine is actually more. You know, I kind of agreed with Wayne that I think he was a little more right. This was just something someone that Graham was with pointed this out, this Draco thing, but I'm not sure if that was as much what was going on. I think it makes sense for them to use Perseus in this in Cambodia because it was rising on before you know, these other stars would be the Pleiades and stuff, so it kind of made more sense. And anyway, Wayne Herschel has this website, thehiddenrecords.com. All the stuff's from there. He's got unbelievable work. He's got up all these visual great graphics to help you see. So yeah, this is just unreal. You have France, the caves in Lascaux. You have Taurus, the Pleiades on his back, and Orion over here. This is what you're seeing in the sky. Taurus with the Pleiades behind it. This other star up here. And you're pointing through Taurus to the Pleiades. Just brilliant. And this is Göbekli Tepe with a massive bull geoglyph around it. And these are the Pleiades. That's Göbekli Tepe.
Wow.
So here's a better picture of that. This is untouched, the image of this cow with its horns and the Pleiades within its back, just like in the constellation. And this is in the 17,000-year-old, at least, Lascaux caves with these beautiful paintings. You got to have a civilization before you can paint like this. Before you can know these things. And why remember this? Why put this in a cave and make sure people knew to help it get to us today? So this is what the bull geoglyph looks like at Göbekli Tepe. Have you ever heard of a bull geoglyph there? I have not heard of anyone who has pointed this out besides Wayne Herschel. And Göbekli Tepe is one of the most important archaeological sites on the planet, hands down, no question, because it's so old and it shows us so much. And only like 1.5 or 2 of these stone circles have been uncovered here, but this entire hill has been scanned, and there's at least 20 stone circles under here yet waiting to be dug up. So we've seen less than 5% of Göbekli Tepe so far, as we know. And we've also got Karahan Tepe very close by. Turkey has a lot to show in terms of giving support to the Sphinx hypothesis as well, because everyone agrees this spot's at least 12,000 years old, you know, so it's already in that range. And it's kind of the smoking gun. So, okay, that's kind of my Wayne Herschel, showing what he's got to offer. Great stuff. Check out thehiddenrecords.com. I really love Wayne's work. It's pretty brilliant, I think. And now we're into, I think this is my last gallery, so we're not doing too bad on time, but this is the Osirian at Abydos. And because these stones are so huge, no hieroglyphs, no nothing, these are the kind of stones that look like what's going on at the Sphinx temple, right at Giza in front of the Sphinx. And looks like the Great Pyramids, like this completely different style of building that clearly came from a totally different time. So John and Shock and a lot of people are pretty much feeling like the Osirian, which was way lower than the Abydos temple next door, right next to it, is on a way other level. This is deep underground, and The Abydos temple actually looks like they built it and then kind of bent it off to the side, possibly because they realized that this one was under it, possibly, as they were building. But you can see, I think that's Muhammad. I can't actually tell because he's kind of small, but you can see a scale of how big that is. This is the article I just wanted to shout out that Dobecki and Schock put out when they did the seismic scans under the Sphinx and found this chamber right under, you know, I'm not going to call it the Hall of Records, but the entrance to the Hall of Records, as Casey described, was under the Sphinx's paws. So the chamber, the rectangular anomaly they found, was probably, you know, the entrance to getting into that underground where the records were. This was Professor Reisner's diagram that he let out. This was early 1920s, I believe, where Reisner was actually the guy who kind of found that Khafra statue and ended up kind of allowing this Khafra hypothesis to come out. I don't know if that's actually what he believed or just what he was pressured into, because this excavation went on for many, many months, and he started releasing all this data saying, we went in through the head, we found these chambers, went down into the Sphinx. There's this giant temple under or inside the Sphinx's body. And after all this, eventually something happened where it ended, and all these American newspapers just said, this was all hoax, it was all fake, it was a joke. Just kidding. But he came out with this stuff, so
beautiful. Thank goodness.
Come on. You know, oh yeah. So here we're getting into, I got two more people I just want to shout out here and show some of their stuff. And this is from Money Saves Today, Dr. Money Saves Today, he's just got really great contributions he's brought to this as we're getting more towards the present, because there's a lot of stuff coming out right now. And this is an old wooden panel, very old, showing what is actually the Sphinx. And as we were saying, a female lioness. You can't see her head so good right here, but I'm going to show you in some of these other slides. She was a lioness. And you have this chamber looking thing next to the Sphinx, which has something in it. Kind of looks like a room of some kind. This is from the Dream Steel. We have these two names for the Sphinx. One is the living statue of Horakti, and one is Horem Akhet by Zokar and Rose Tau. Rose Tau is Giza, or the underground of Giza specifically. And so, yeah, Horem, we kind of, I think we're reading this one from the right to left because the birds are facing this way. So we got this Horus, Horem. This is the Akhet symbol of the horizon with the sun rising between two mountains. So these are two of the names given to the Sphinx right now as an anthropomorphic half man, half lion form, Horem Akhet and Horakti. So yeah, this goes back further. You can see the toes of this guy. This is a statue, and this is a title that's given to him. And it's a dual title. Basically, this axe symbol means master of. The royal scribes, this is a stylus with an ink pen. And then you have master of, again, this axe symbol. And then this symbol, which we don't know. And then a picture of Mehit, which is the name of the Great Sphinx when she was a lioness, which I'll show in a second. But again, you can't really see her face great in this. But essentially, this is a dual title saying master of the royal scribes and master of something of Mehit, the female lioness Sphinx. So Manu's wondering, what is this? And we started calling this the bent rod glyph, or something like that, that it might be a bent metal rod, which Manu started calling a key. It would seem it is a key, which would mean master of the keys to Mehit, basically. And we'll show why. This is another picture. This one's not as good. Here's another one. These are screenshots from Manu's video presentation. And again, you see master of the royal scribes, master of the keys of Mehit. Here you can see she's a lioness. She's not human. And this one, actually, you can see even better. This is a great one. So you can see she's a female lion. And this would be a determinative glyph, it would be called, because this is the spelling Mehit. And then this is showing you again that you're talking about Mahit, or Mahit is this lioness character. And so this whole title was only given to 5 people we know of in the entire history of Egypt. It's very rare, very, very high title. This means someone had the keys to the chamber under the Sphinx. Only 5 people ever had it, the last of which was named Mary, who was supposedly basically the last one to have this title, and then the title was never used again, probably because that was when the Sphinx got recarved and its head turned into a man.
Which Mary, Trevor, which Mary are you referring to? Mary who?
Mary, it's this ancient Egyptian person who was, I think it's spelled M-E-R-I. And this is in Manu's video. He talks a little bit about this character because it was supposedly the last person to have this title. So Manu suspects that this was the person who was involved in recarving the Sphinx's head and kind of starting up this new cult of the anthropomorphic Sphinx with the human face on it. And after that, you couldn't use this title because it's referencing a female lioness, and that statue doesn't exist anymore. So you can't reference it in your royal title. The Sphinx didn't look like this anymore after that, which makes sense as to why he was the last one to have this title. Very interesting. But Manu also shows this is, I think, a Middle Kingdom statue of a lioness, which I think is in the Cairo Museum. And this is probably the closest thing we have to look at to guess what the Sphinx originally looked like before the head was recarved. So you can see how much mass you have in this neck to carve from to make that other head, which is much smaller and non-proportional. But this might have been what Mahit really looked like when she was the guardian above these archives. This is an above shot from Mark Lehner actually took this. I'm not such a fan of him because he was very kind of against John's theories when they came out at first, but he did provide this pretty good image, which Manu shared. And it's important because right here you can see basically the rectangular cavity that John and Schock and Thomas Dobecki found. And right here you can see where Zahi and the team tried to drill into the chamber, but missed, whoops, just off from where it would have hit. And we could have dropped a camera down into the chamber if this is just missing. I believe he was saying that all of these might be drills or points at which they scanned from or something, but so close, yet so far away. Ridiculous, really. But, you know, this is another picture Manu shares of where here you see this triplicity of the bent rod symbol, which means key. And again, like an anthropomorphic figure above this Hall of Records looking shape. Just all this stuff. And so this is from 13 to 1100 BC, Wallace Budge's translation of A Hymn to Shu. So this isn't from before the Sphinx was supposed to exist, but what it says about the Sphinx is worth repeating. A will hath been done into writing by the Lord of Kamenu, Thoth, the scribe of the library of Ra-Harmachis. In the hall of the divine house or temple of Anu, Heliopolis, stabilized, perfected, and made permanent in hieroglyphs under the feet of Ra-Harmachis, he shall transmit it to the son of his son forever and ever. So this is a quick excerpt from my book. I got to get rid of some of these spelling errors, but I describe basically what Manu Safzadeh says. Harmachis is the Greek term equated with Horamachet. So this would seem to be a direct account describing Thoth, netter of wisdom, writing art, philosophy, and secret teachings, writing documents and storing them in the library of the Sphinx, Harmachis, within a divine house or temple. It was made permanent below the feet of the Sphinx in hieroglyphs, under the feet of Ra-Harmachis. So we have a direct hieroglyphic account saying there's a sacred library hidden beneath the Sphinx. You can't take this any other way. I mean, it's directly stating it. And this is my favorite because since Manu was the one to decipher this key, he ended up calling it the jaw sign. And the fact is, it's actually a key. And John Anthony West, was actually the key to help figuring this whole thing out and the inspiration. Robert Schoch was working with Manu as they were finding all this. So I love, obviously, that they honored John Anthony West by naming this hieroglyph after him. It's beautiful. This is Manu down here talking about it. And up here you can see Under the Sphinx is the name of the video. You should just watch this. This is a whole hour-and-a-half long presentation that's amazing. Really want to shout this out. So that's Manu Saves Today. This is his book, amazing book. You know, Elena shouted this out in her bibliography for the Cedars. I was so glad to see this in here because, yeah, she was talking a bit about the name of the Sphinx today, and she even brought out Mahit, the original name of the Sphinx, and really happy to see that stuff in there, and happy to see, you know, of course, she's paying attention to Manu Safe today. He's a big deal with helping this stuff come out.
Well,
this is just
Elena Danan is herself a scientist and a fully long-term trained archaeologist, so she would know because she's been there 8 years every day, waking up at silly o'clock, you know, uncovering ancient artifacts. So it's wonderful that people come together with their own findings, right?
Yeah, yeah. I kind of worked in a little point to mention this book, mention her book towards the end, but yeah, it's basically just there's a lot to say about that, and I'd love to talk about Cedars at some point. I don't know how much we can say today, but I'm actually feeling okay. We're about almost getting to the end here. But yeah, quickly, this comes into just something I shared the other day, which is all these US military intelligence insignias that have the Sphinx. And I was talking to Manu about this, where the key is actually coming out of the Sphinx's back once again, just like in that royal title. And these are all kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then bringing it back to here, so we remember this symbol right here, and what that looks like, what the Hall of Records looks like on the Dream Steel. So after my tour, I ended up getting an extra couple days in Egypt. I went up to Alexandria with a friend for a day, came back down. I spent another day on the plateau, and we found this temple very close to the Sphinx, right on the plateau. Walked in, and this guard was like, no pictures inside this one. So instantly you're kind of like, oh, what do they not want you to take pictures of in here? So after exploring a bit, I kind of did a little guard distraction duty while my friend snapped this picture. I'd say this is pretty clearly the sign of the Hall of Records. And you see this kid is coming out from here. You can actually go underneath here. It goes down behind this thing into this other chamber. You got to go like 20 feet or further down, and you come into this other chamber where there's a huge like Saqqara or Serapeum style box, one of these huge single stone boxes down there. And yeah, that's kind of its own thing, but very interesting that they didn't want you taking pictures in this temple. And I'd say that looks quite a bit like that shape right there, right? Mm. I think that's pretty okay, one second, my cat. Okay, that's my cat is trying to get back inside. So let's keep going here. This is the Osiris shaft, or the Osiris tomb, they're calling it. And this is big news these days. This goes straight down. Basically, the entrance is right between the middle pyramid and the Sphinx. So it's right on that causeway, but there's these big chambers. It goes deep down. This is another drawing of it from someone. And this actually shows some of these tunnels coming off from the bottom chamber, which have not been explored fully to the end. There's some open leads here that could be tying into the whole underground complex eventually. So this is where it's at. The Osiris shaft is located right here. There's a Sphinx in the middle pyramid. Okay, and now I have one last person that I want to kind of highlight here, and we're getting to the end, but this is really the really exciting part. This is William Brown, civil engineer, author, lecturer, and 21st century Gizitologist. I think he's the first person to be a Gizitologist, technically. But he has the IRGE, or the Independent Research Group of Egypt, and they're working on not only scans underneath all of Egypt, but also he's got this star map here that's laid out over top. And he has a good idea about where a lot of these things underground are supposed to be. So this is a closer up picture of that. You can kind of see that this is, I'm pretty sure this is Orion right here, with these 3 stars as his belt, which is interesting because Osiris is associated with Orion, just like Isis is associated with Sirius. So you kind of got, you know, the Osiris shaft right here where Orion's belt is, funny enough. And then these other things, this is the Sphinx with the Sphinx temple again, and there's something right there, over here. And if you look over here, this is Cairo. Behind this, all this is city. This is like the city encroaching up on the plateau. And I don't know if you're aware of what the Sphinx has been looking at for a while, but you know, it's built to gaze at the heliacal rising of Leo, at the dawn of the age of Leo in the sky, Leo rising with the sun, you know. And the Sphinx has seen a million sunrises over the days. But for the last couple of decades, unfortunately, Sphinx has been gazing at a KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, like right here. There's actually a pretty cool barbecue spot right next door. I got to eat, and we were just eating and looking out at the Sphinx's face, basically, which is cool. But I mean, it's not what, you know, she's originally meant to be looking at. And so this whole neighborhood has the plateau below it, but people live here, have businesses here, but it's all being demolished. They're all being pushed out of here, which is too bad for locals that, you know, I feel bad, but you know what? We're going to find a lot of stuff here.
Indeed.
And so
Cairo is so massive, isn't it? It's just trying to overtake this ancient vessel, this ancient star map table that we can't have anyone.
It's just coming right up to the pyramids.
Yeah, they're very bossy, the Egyptians. I told a giant man off in the street for whipping his horse half to death, and I thought he was going to thump me across the face. It didn't stop me because he had a rather heavy family on a little carriage. You know how they do horse-drawn carts everywhere. Oh, I'm in Luxor and Karnak, down the River Nile, and I was just amazed at how I was treated as a blue-eyed, blonde-haired woman. I definitely felt the wrath of the masculine dominance in that part of Egypt. And of course, no matter who we are, male or female, we will protect our history, the true history of our planet, regardless of whatever hierarchical seat they put themselves on. They do not have our permission. It's very simple.
Yeah, definitely. There's, I've been concerned about the camels and horses and animals and stuff. I mean, there's some Egyptians are just absolutely animal lovers, and they will just spend time with these animals. They're all over in the Giza, you've got dogs running around and camels and all kinds of animals. And some people just absolutely get it. And they're like, oh, let's appreciate these animals. And then some of the people there are just don't get it at all. There's not many half in between, but yeah, I always love interacting with these animals. I saw crocodiles and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of this ancient versus modern thing going on here right now. And what's happening right up north of the pyramids is the Grand Egyptian Museum is being built. And actually it just opened a couple of days ago. I just saw it first open partially, at least for tour groups. So this is the largest museum on the planet. It's literally
right? That's the gem, the Grand Egyptian Museum gem. I think that's so poignant and deliberate.
Yeah, the gem. And it's angled like a triangle, the building, and the outer directions of the triangle point to the 2 points of the outer of the 3 pyramids. So it's literally just north of the whole plateau. Huge construction stuff going on. And I am of the opinion that, the authorities are trying to use this construction to cover up a lot of this last stuff and make a permanent kind of fix for some of these entrances and things they don't want people finding. Like Andrew Collins found what's called the Cave of the Birds a few years ago, and ended up getting sealed up, metal gate, cement. But that came from behind the pyramids towards them. you know, and then we have the Osiris shaft here going down. We have the Sphinx entrances here, tons of them. And all throughout the plateau, there's all kinds of potential entrances to the underground in general, which I think is all connected. I think it's all one thing. So very exciting to have William Brown up in here at this moment, because as all this construction is happening, and I think they're trying to seal up some of this stuff, maybe with ticket booths and restaurants, even cover over some things. You got guys like William Brown who are not only finding these kind of correlations and understanding where special things are in this neighborhood that's just opening up, but also doing scans of the underground and publishing them, which is getting to the really most exciting stuff at the end here. This is one of them from Giza. He's one of the chambers he found at Giza. So he ended up buying this property in that neighborhood right in front of the Sphinx. He got some help to purchase this a few years ago. And yeah, he's been putting his own money into this. He demolished the entire building on the property. It was this old horse stable house, it sounded like. But when he actually moved in there, he was finding that the walls of this building were like a meter thick, which doesn't really make sense for a horse stable. He was kind of thinking, was this eventually at some point like potentially a building that had access into some underground things and was actually a fortified kind of protected building? But anyway, this whole neighborhood's getting demolished, and he had this whole building demolished so they could start working on this site. But he already knew that there was something pretty important under this seemingly, you know, not too valuable property. I mean, it's valuable because it's right by Giza, but otherwise it's just a horse stable. So he got himself positioned here, and you can see in relation to the Sphinx how far we're talking. And here he is standing amidst the rubble. This is another picture from him where you're seeing what he's calling the pyramid of records, which is a buried pyramid of records underground. That's a kind of new phrase, some stuff that's just coming out lately, and he's talking about the KC prophecies, and yeah, this stuff is starting to open itself up. And there's this kind of Russian group over here that's working. I'll show a better picture of that soon. But so these are some of the straight up 90-degree, absolutely straight, smooth, square, rectangular scans of the underground of Giza. This is the kind of stuff William has been dropping out over the past year, especially in the past last months, especially. This is what's really heating up. He's described finding these tunnels below his property and running into Giza that are literally square tunnels, 10 feet by 10 feet, like wide by height. So huge tunnels just going into the heart of Giza. He's finding all this stuff and he's publishing it, which is putting pressure on the authorities to have to say something about it eventually. And that's the exciting part we're getting to now. Right. A couple more pictures of his stable project, and like I say, he's putting his own resources into this, demolishing this building. I saw him standing. He's into these energetic devices as well. He uses tensor rings to essentially make med beds, like beds with tensor rings that you go into, and like with a ring around each chakra, basically. Some really incredible stuff. So I was asking him some things about that, and I shared with him at one point these Pleiadian tachyon beds I'd found on this website. And I was like, what do you think about this? But, you know, he's open to this stuff. So he was like, that's interesting. But he said that his designs were kind of more inspired by Arcturians. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I hear they've got some of the best tech in the galaxy, you know, like, not going to phase me with that talk. Let's go there. And yeah, so I knew he was kind of open to all this side of things.
Well, they better be. There's no room for separation anymore. You know, everything's collapsing into one. Yeah.
Yep. And that's kind of where I'm bringing it up. This is the one last thing with William. He's working at Hawara, where there's this legendary underground labyrinth, which has been described there. Supposed to have 3,000 chambers, have 2 levels below the ground, and 12 different pharaohs were involved in its building and buried within it. So this is another picture by Athanasius Kircher, who gave us the Dendera zodiac earlier. And yeah, this thing is this huge labyrinth, huge deal, underground. This is another image of the two layers with a city on top. So it's known that this basically exists at Hawara, and it's underground. And Robert Schock and Catherine Ulysses, they have done a recent article. They were trying to look into a lot more what's going on here, look underground. But William has also been working at Hawara with his wife Lucina, is here dowsing around Hawara. And they're looking at all this different stuff, doing the ground penetrating radar scans there. And you can see this giant mud brick pyramid is there, which Robert and Katie are actually saying that many of these Egyptian temples were buried tediously, intentionally buried, just like Göbekli Tepe. So it was buried to preserve these spots for us today. These more ancient temples, they're covered in mud bricks. It points to just have big stones stacked up next to the wall, which were too big for the wind to have moved, but the wind could then pack it in with smaller sediment. So Katie and Robert, they've been just they just put out a paper about this. It's something called like the intentional burial of Egypt. Great article, and it shows examples from all over Egypt, where they actually collected all of this evidence while I was with them on our trip. And they discovered this whole connection to Göbekli Tepe, which was also intentionally buried probably around 8,000 or 9,000 BC, because they wanted Göbekli Tepe to last all the way till now for us, so we could see this. So Bill is also doing this great work at Hawara, and his wife, the two of them are very close, working together. You know, she's definitely got a lot of this more psychic aspects of things. He's very psychic too. He's remembered his past life in Atlantis or in Egypt in that age. And so they both have kind of, redeemed these memories of past lives, I think, and are quite tapped in. They found this chamber underneath Hawara, very interesting. So, and coming back to Giza, this is where the Russian expedition was going on, and Williams tried to talk to these Russians, I think, try to get help from them or join in with them or see what he can do. Hasn't had much luck with that. This is the name of his video too. This is just a 12-minute great little video here, and he puts his number right here. He's very open. Dani, I would personally suggest that William would make an excellent speaker next year if you want to invite him to the Galactic Spiritual
at this stage, I will say to you that we already have our lineup of speakers, but not to say that I couldn't meet with this beautiful person and share their, I mean, it's my channel is to share, honestly.
Oh my goodness.
As you know,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, not even next year even, but I would put him on the list, you know, because of some of these last couple slides I've got too, kind of tie it together. But I'm really excited by what Bill is doing here, and he's very tapped into this now, which these things will show. There's a couple more slides. This is a book that I just found and just got into, and this is a book from 1958. And I've had it for 4 or 5 years, but I just ended up reading it now. And there's a reason for that, but it's unbelievable. This comes from a source of records that I think makes sense to me. Sounds legitimate to me. And right here is just one of the pages. It says, "The Great Pyramid is a fantastic encyclopedia of physical science and astral lore. The science of numbers, weights, measures, astronomy, astrology, and the secret mysteries of physiology are symbolized in that incomparable document." And someday I will get into Da Vinci and the chakras built into the pyramid and all that. But
brilliant.
Just
mate, we've been going pretty much 2 hours, so let's wrap this beautiful presentation so far gently and beautifully into a beautiful finish where we can pick up next time.
Okay, yeah, no, this is almost the end. You can see I'm at 36 of 55. Some of these last ones take a second, but we're almost there. So I knew this was going to take longer than an hour, but we could cut it up.
That's okay. That's no problem.
Yeah, all that's left is the most exciting recent stuff. So I was going to say this. first it's saying an advanced culture existed thousands of years prior to the historic period. But here it says there are many secret chambers within the Great Pyramid, and that its true entrance lies under the silent object that is like a lion and yet like a man, the Sphinx. So it's saying these secret chambers within the Great Pyramid are actually accessed from under the Sphinx. That's pretty important for what I'm about to show you here. Now, these are, all the main chambers we know about. And these are all basically in a plane along the middle, not too many. This is basically all we've known. And we had these muon scanning equipment. It's been scanning muons, are like cosmic particles in the stone. You can kind of get a pretty good idea of how many chambers were going to be left for us to find. And I'm in Egypt talking to Robert Schoch, a great geologist, about this, perfect person to ask. And basically these scans were showing a couple little potential chambers up towards the top and one big one over the Grand Gallery. But essentially something came out, and I think it was a completely different technology than the muon scanning, even newer. And this just came out 2 or 3 weeks ago. These new scans of the pyramid, which just made the rounds between all of us, Hall of Records people, my friends I'm just always talking to about this. These got around. This is one of the views of how many more chambers they're now seeing in the pyramid, going down to the bottom, going up around the sides. This is a great image right here. This is what we have now. As of a few weeks ago, this scan just came out. So this is the entrance right here. This massive chamber up at the top is blocking even the view of the Grand Gallery. And this is the outsides here coming down around. These are some of the images they built this model from, and it's this whole article you can look up. I'll put a link to it. But so essentially I'm talking to William Brown about this, and Money Safe today just shared this, and we're all talking about it. It's all getting passed around. Everyone's like, hey, you seen the new scans of the pyramid? It's crazy. And it is. So when I'm talking to William Brown about it, this is what he says to me. The lower northeast corner of the Great Pyramid shows the room and a tunnel that connects to our discovery information last month in Giza. Not a coincidence. He's saying these lower tunnels come out to the stuff he's already discovered. He already knows how these connect into the rest of the Giza underground. So this is a book I would shout out because it ties into remembering past lives in Egypt. It's very great, absolute important book about Dorothy Eady, who remembered her life as Seti, and would just want to recommend that quick. I know we're at the end. This is another book along the same lines that I highly recommend. Elizabeth H was a yoga teacher, and she ended up remembering a whole past life in Egypt, training under Imhotep and her initiation, and everything she wrote really corresponded to the kind of stuff I saw going on there. So blowing through this, okay, we're gonna have to talk about this book later because this book changed everything.
Book is changing the world. This book is changing the world. End of. As far as I'm concerned, it links together all the great scholars, all the ancient truths, and it's beautiful. And there's no way we are going to open a page of this book right now. We'll be here for 2 weeks. I don't.
Too much for now. I've just got a couple last of these slides that I had to just put a slide of this, but we need to talk about this later. Nothing happened to the Hall of Records search this big.
Been there. She's been under the Sphinx. You know that, right? Elena has been under the Sphinx. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I read this book in 2 days flat. I just barely happened to get one at the conference because, like I said, I didn't know I was going until days before, and then someone had an extra. I got a copy. It's right here right now, and it is highlighted like crazy. It is got notes in it, but the book affected me deeply. Yeah. I've been writing my book for 15, 16 years now, and it's books like this that make me feel like I could even potentially publish my own, and it hits so much of what is so close to my heart. It's amazing. I love it. So I start wanting to give this book out to my friends and share it with them. And I would just say quickly that one of the reasons I think I didn't read The Secret Places of the Line until now is because of this, which is I have to read. It's basically also at that time, Maya brought out 2 of the crystal balls originally brought by visitors from outer space. During the building of the Great Pyramid, these objects were not solid crystal, were made up of 9 sections fitted and locked together to form a globe or ball. As light passed through them, it was changed in a most unusual manner, and the past and future could be partially ascertained in the ball. However, a certain amount of mental control was needed by the user during the period of concentration using the crystal ball. These balls were used telepathically as a screen for time scanners. The existence was not known by the Amun priests, who could never have used it because the objects could never be used for a negative purpose. But several of these crystal balls are still under the Sphinx. Nostradamus had one and deduced many things from its use. So this is a book from 1958 that actually corroborates the cedars. You know, the chapter of when she does go under there, she describes these things that sound exactly like this. Maybe a little more egg-shaped than ball-shaped, but I think that's pretty interesting. So, okay, I'm reading the cedars, and I'm trying to give it out to everyone I know who is very interested in the Hall of Records. Some of them aren't quite open to the whole ET side of things, so you know, I give or take, but I've recommended it wholeheartedly to Robert and Katie, to Robert Schock and Katie, and to a bunch of my people who are very strict standards, very, you know, play it safe with these things, but still I was like, all my honor, all the respect I've earned from you, check out the cedars.
Beautiful.
So I sent it to William Brown, and he's one who's more open to this stuff. So I'm just chatting with him about it, and being, after he showed me what I just showed you, that he's found these chambers already connected to the Great Pyramid. I'm talking to him, and I say, look, you got to read this book, The Cedars by Elena Danaan.
This stuff, this is the true history of our Earth. Than any of the scholars, the students, the scientists, the historians, the archaeologists, they better get on board the true ancient beginnings of this planet. Otherwise, they're going to miss the boat, because the science does not match the archaeology, the real history. It doesn't, but it's all coming together right now.
Yeah.
No, so it's not this stuff in terms of people put that in a box, or they call it woohoo, which makes me want to slap them hard, because we haven't got time, you know, I mean that lovingly, but we ain't got time for people to sit and bloody hypothesize and postulate, do I believe this? Who cares if you believe it or not? Move along, because other people are coming like you to drop in and mix and match information together that makes sense, that we can understand. So that's where we are. That's what time it is right now.
Yeah. So yeah, this next slide is one of the most exciting ones in the whole slideshow. This is me. I'm talking to William Brown, and I'm being like, you should read The Cedars. And it's by Elena Danaan. He's like, who's that? And I'm like, okay. Here's her credentials. That she's this trained archaeologist. She's 8 years in Egypt, working under Zahi Hawass, all this stuff. I brought up the fact that she gets deep into the kind of authorities that are behind kind of preventing people from getting access to these sites. Which I know William Brown has faced up against a bit, where he's, you know, not been able to get access to sites like Hawara when he's tried. And he has been treated well by Zahi Hawass, has invited him onto his own team before, which he politely declined. But basically, you know, I kind of listed off all these credentials of Elena Danaan to be like, yeah, you should check this out. And kind of wrapped it up with, I was like, she's a personal friend of Enki. And there was this double take in the conversation right here where he kind of responded to that. And this is what he said. I was like, you know him? Speaking of Enki, he goes, my wife channels Enki, who helped us at Giza. That is how we found the tomb entrance last month.
Wow, there you go.
This was like
interesting energetics.
a couple weeks ago or something. I got this. You can see my reaction right there.
I mean, you know? Yeah. I mean, again, we don't know for definite if that is Enki who she channels, but however, you know, that there's all this like kind of falling in together, these different things happening. It's wonderful.
Yeah. You know, I'm saying at the very least, you got to be part of this community here, part of this thing going on with you and with Elena and Michael and all these people. So this was oh my goodness, we got to go deeper on this. And then, what else do we have? This was from like 2 or 3 nights ago. Okay, I've been asked to return to Giza. Dr. Hawass has agreed to allow Japanese to do our project, and they have asked me to meet December 10th to sign the agreement.
Wow.
This was like 3 nights ago.
Wow. Wow.
He's going back December 10th. He's going to meet with the Japanese team. These last two quick little one, meeting with Japanese, then Dr. Hawass. Our project will start soon, and I will see. So he got his permission. He's been putting pressure on the authorities for the whole last year, putting out all of these discoveries and his own scans that are showing the stuff under the ground, and there's only so long they can avoid pretending to see it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So William Brown.
If they don't want the craft to land, they better get their act together and allow the archaeologists to explore, because it's going to be handled for them. Right? That's where we are right now.
Yeah, no, I've been describing it as like the Giza Plateau is a time capsule that will open itself. The Egyptian authorities thinking they have any power over that, it's just, come on, dude. It's a joke. I think Giza is an alarm clock. I referenced it as the other day, which is set to the processional dawn of the age of Aquarius. And there's no snooze button for that. It's going to open itself up. There's nothing anyone can do to stop it. And it's going to change the world completely as soon as it does. These are the very end kind of slides here. This is, Graham posted this yesterday, talking about Facebook banning him, locking him out of his author account, and referencing all these articles that are slandering him, basically. And this is some of the pictures, a collage of all these articles that are just trying to rip Graham Hancock apart as he just asks good questions, you know. It's ridiculous. So I ended up sharing this article I wrote, which is also on my website and also covers a lot of the stuff I just talked about in more detail. And I shared this with him last night, but just this morning, this is what I woke up to this morning. This is the name of the article, Why the War for Archaeology Needs to End. It's just called Archaeology Wars. And so I posted this to him. I was like, I got your back, Graham, best I can. Fegan's Hoops, some of these guys and their gang of thugs came at me as well. The backlash from America before made me feel the need to tell this story, because this was from 2020, actually. And he wrote this morning, Trevor, thank you for your excellent and insightful article.
Wonderful, wonderful. And there's your opusmagnum.org, opusmagnum.org, where all of the slides we've seen today exist, and a lot of your work is there too. Beautiful.
Yep. Yeah, here's a parting shot of the Sphinx looking at the sunrise. Beautiful. Here's one last shot of the Sphinx here. So yeah, very, very exciting stuff happening at Giza right now. This is why I say opening the Hall of Records is the appropriate title for this this bit of information here. And yeah, I do have so much more that's you know, in the later books I was writing and other things that are really fascinating, but this is really the chunk of stuff that's closest to my heart and I'm most passionate about, the Hall of Records and the Sphinx. And yeah, this is the site, you know, this is the web page. You can check out this gallery. I have one like couple seconds long video right here. Let me see if this plays.
Was known to have protected, at least based on our interpretations, when I say our, in this case, Manu Safzadeh and myself, interpretation of the inscriptions and the details. We published that. The chamber that we found was under the left paw, so that's the left paw, and it's
under the left paw. That's just a little quick shot I got
so
from Robert while we were there that I wanted to show in. So that is the whole slideshow. We got through it. That wasn't too bad. But yeah, there's my website. I have Archaeology Wars, the article I just mentioned right up here in the top, some of my art and some of my bookstore reading list library. If you want to look into these authors and these ideas more, you can check out the site. I did have a bunch of articles up on this site, but I took them all down because they're just not right. They need to be done better and it's sloppy. So I'm working on just going back through everything, putting it all into the book.
good. Well,
this slideshow is right here. If you just do opusmagnum.org/records, you can see all these pictures I just shared today. So.
Yeah. No, it's great. And I just applaud you for your own individual research and your own mapping of what you have come to understand is something that definitely equates to a lot of other scholars before you. I'm very grateful that I met you, very grateful that I can share my small but mighty channel with you. And I'm pretty sure that we will be doing a second, play date here. And during that time, it'd be good to discuss more of the pineal gland and the different helmets and crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. It could go more into the languaging of the Jedi, Jehuti, the Jedi.
Yes,
Talk about the silver alien that followed me back from Egypt. I want to talk also about some of the materials that these monuments are made of, which is red granite. Not enough is said about red granite and why they use it, and why Hatshepsut created 2 matching obelisks. They say they're one of the first obelisks in Egypt. And also write down the meteor showers and Perseus, the Greek Perseus, where we consider certain times of year. There's a lot that still blends all together. So I would love to play with you again. So I say to our beautiful audience, if you have enjoyed Trevor Grassi, please let us know in the comments, not the live section, please, the comments section, and we can invite him back. Trevor?
well, yeah. Awesome. I would love to get into all that stuff. I love Hatshepsut. I love the rose granite, red granite of Egypt, all those topics, especially pineal gland. And yeah, I just have to say absolutely thank you so much, because this is a huge, huge deal for me. It's been 15, 16 years, and I've just never, ever tried to even begin it. And in order to begin it, I needed to jump on this whole chunk of topics at once, and it's really a remarkable, amazing experience for me to get to come on your channel. Your channel is, there's not many I would go on even if I was invited. This is stuff I think that could really be used within this community, and getting to read the series before coming on, I'm getting an idea of what's already been said, and I think this is a lot of the stuff that's right at the beginning of what I can actually offer to a conversation. So
Beautiful.
can't thank you enough, really, for this and the conference. It was incredible.
There's no such thing as coincidence, and a lot of us made a lot of it took us a lot to get to the conference, the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, which is where you and I met. It took everything in me to be able to build and create with a beautiful team of people, and really just be prepared to go all in, because we knew it was time. I knew it was time, and I was guided. And so I meet you, and now we get to share all this beautiful intel that is other people's research too. We know that, but you are so good at also saying this is this person, this is that, and that's what's missing. If somebody's going to present another body of work, tell who the author is, the researcher is. Don't spew it out. Honor where honor is due, I say. So it's my pleasure, darling. You know that, to have you here with me. And I know that our audience is super smart, super ahead. There's a lot of people coming on who are catching up, and a lot of the Earth history from the archaeological sites, they'll be able to take their time to marry in their own minds what fits for them, what feels right to them. Mm-hmm. So in closing, to you guys out there, this is probably one you're going to have to watch in pieces so that you can really absorb the information. And we will be doing a part 2 soon. And so I send you all out there, my love, and I will see you soon.
Okay, thank you so much.